Thank God it's Friday. Welcome to the final episode of Business Morning for this week. I'm Ini John McCoy. It's time to do 55 minutes of current and relevant business conversations. So let's get right into it and begin with what's going on in the oil space. Prices rose on Friday and are set for a third weekly gain as better than expected Chinese economic data and reports of record oil consumption bolstered the view that demand in the world's second largest crude consumer will continue to surge. Brent crude futures rose 65 cents to $94.35. That's really high. While the U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude was up 67 cents to $90.83. Both benchmarks were up 4% from a week ago. China's industrial output and retail sales grew at a faster than expected rate in August, suggesting that the world's second largest economy is starting to stabilize from a month-long stumble. Data from the National Bureaux released on Friday also showed oil refinery processing rose to a record 64.69 million tons in August, and that's up 19.6% from a year earlier, and equal to 15.23 million barrels per day refining throughput. That's a surge as Chinese processors kept run rate high to meet summer travel demand and capitalize on threatening margins for exporting to Asian consumers. We're also talking oil now, but edible oil. Malaysian palm oil futures rose for a third straight session on Friday, recouping some of the losses suffered earlier this week as rival vegetable oil firmed and traders awaited export data for further direction. The benchmark palm oil contract for November delivery on the Bursa Malaysia Derivatives Exchange gained 36 ringgit. That's about 0.96% to 3,797 ringgit, equivalent of about $810 per metric ton by midday. The contract has declined 0.89% so far in the week in what would be its second straight weekly drop. Dalian's most active soy oil contract gained 1.19%, while its palm oil contract increased 0.86%. Soy oil prices on the Chicago Board of Trade were up 0.57%. Meanwhile, palm oil's gains were limited by data showing Malaysia's palm oil inventory rose to a 7-month high at the end of August. Top palm oil buyer India imported 1.13 million tons of palm oil in August, a 3.9% increase from the previous month to the highest in 9 months. We move to the grains market now. Chicago wheat futures climbed high on Friday after Canada's production forecast was upgraded by a smaller margin than expected, although prices hovered near 33-month lows due to ample supply from Russia. Corn and soybean futures edged higher. The most active wheat contract on the Chicago Board of Trade was up 0.4% to $5.96 a bushel, but flat over the week. Prices touched $5.70 a bushel on Tuesday, and that's the lowest since November 2020. In Europe, meanwhile, consultant Strategy Grains cut their forecast for European Union soft wheat export by 700,000 tons to 30.1 million metric tons this season, citing EU wheat was proving uncompetitive against Russian grain. Let's come to Nigeria now, where Nigeria, both at the federal and sub-national levels, can significantly increase internally generated revenue through the use of technology as seen in developed countries. This is the submission of the tax experts at InterSwitch Nigeria Revenue Summit, which brought together tax administrators and other relevant stakeholders from across the country to discuss issues around revenue collection, generation, and digitalization at the core.
Tax administrators and experts, as well as representatives of the Joint Tax Board at the InterSwitch Nigeria Revenue Summit, are being provided with a unique opportunity to delve deeper into the intricate web of digital payment strategies.
You're welcome, man.
The Executive Secretary of the Joint Tax Board is excited about the prospects of revenue growth and collaborative measures aimed at fortifying the country's fiscal landscape.
You imagine what we would generate if the switching companies, InterSwitch as their leader, because all this money passed through their platform, avail us this data, and we're able to mine the data, what quantum of leap we will get in our revenue in this country.
InterSwitch, who are already partnering over 30 states with digital payment solutions, is happy that the partnerships are now paying off.
We set out to inform, to educate, to enlighten, and also to give opportunity for collaboration. And I must say that the states have been very open in all their discussions, giving each other feedback on the things that they have done, working with us as partners.
Create a forum where like minds can come together to put together a template that will be used for revenue growth across the various subnationals, because prosperity is key to us in Africa. We believe that when revenue grows, the prosperity also happens in the various subnationals.
Today we process for over 30 states, and it keeps growing. So I will be moving from one sector of the economy to the other. So I would say that it has been impressively received, and we are still collaborating and partnering with a lot more states to do this.
However, the keynote speaker wants state revenue generating agencies to be more creative in their revenue drive.
The state internal revenue services are very siloed in their approach, but if they can now start collaborating a bit more and sharing data, for instance, I could live in Imo State and have houses in Abia, and nobody knows how many houses I have in Abia, but all they are seeing is me in my little apartment in Imo, and that's all they see in terms of being able to determine my ability to pay taxes, right?
Tax administrators are leaving the summit armed with greater knowledge to better enhance their revenue drive.
Test of collections.
Yes, finding ways to make collection of taxes easier and more transparent. Now, we have the Association of Bureaux de Change Operators of Nigeria, ABCON, asking for a merger of several Bureaux de Change operators, not recapitalization of the industry. Of course, this comes from talks around the regulator that they might be recapitalized, and they're recommending this for effective corporate governance and rules of engagement with the Apex Bank, the CBN. It asks the central bank to regulate emerging BDCs from the consolidation exercise. We have, the person who released that joining us on the program now, virtually from Abuja. We have Mr. Gwadabe, the President, Association of Bureau de Change Operators of Nigeria, Mr. Aminu Gwadabe. Good morning, Mr. Gwadabe. Thank you for your time.
Good morning.
So kindly tell us
Good morning, Nigerians.
So can you let us know exactly what you mean by this? You're not asking for recapitalization, you're asking for mergers. What does that mean, and why are you talking about that at this time?
Okay, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to make further clarification. First, I want to start by laying a foundation to correct the misconception trading on the media that BDC acts of 300 million outright capitalization for each BDC. That is not exact and is misleading, erroneous. What we meant in our roadmap to reforms, instead of what the regulators always embark upon, outright capitalization. We have seen it in 2004, where the Bureau de Change capital was moved from 10 million to 35 million, and that led to the expulsion of many of our members. Also in 2007, 2008, we saw the introduction of Class A, where the Apex Bank recapitalized to the tune of 500 million. In fact, most of us that are skillful, we could not meet that requirement, and as a result of that, we lost out. Also, not long ago in 2023, we have seen where, even though it's a pilot scheme, that a Bureau de Change has been appointed, known as Cadavra, to partner with Flutterwave. So these are some of the fears we have seen from the regulators. So we said, how do we also, as a stakeholder, give our own input? And we arrived at, yes, there are different modes of capitalization. There could be mergers and consolidation. In the same vein, banks were allowed to merge and consolidate when they were about 120, coming back to about 18 and 20. The same thing happened to merchant banks, discount houses, so that they form capacity for corporate governance. So this is our request, whereby they should allow merger for the existing Bureau de Change And we have also stated during that period there should be no any issuance of any new license, so that we, the existing, can benefit from the regulation. 2 is to address the challenges of the regulator on how to streamline our many members as participants, like I've rightly said, and quoted years of these reforms. Then thirdly is to address the stigmatization of our members of lacking compliance, lacking corporate governance, and on ease of supervision. So these are what we meant, and I sincerely want to thank my members and also appreciate their understanding. Yes, we all know it's no more business as usual. So as stakeholders, we need to be proactive, we need to be disruptive, we need to tell the stakeholders and the regulators that this is our own thinking in our roadmap.
So how do you hope to go about this? What strategies do you have in place? Have you been talking to the Apex Bank? You know, where are you in this suggestion?
Yeah, we have been talking to the central bank. We have engaged a lot of experts. We have spent millions of naira on research and development, more especially now that the CBN is saying that everybody should go tech, to embrace technology. So we have done a lot of things. We are prepared. In 2018, that's where we first started our digitalization journey, where we launched what is called NigeriaBDC.com. NigeriaBDC.com is an exchange rate portal where all our members are involved. So we are developing it, we are building it, we are engaging with tech companies on how to create a payment platform for partnership so that all our members. The thinking of the association is that every one of our members should not be left out in the new drive, in the new reforms of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Not long ago, all our members now extract their returns through the automation of their business operation to send to the Central Bank of Nigeria online real time. Our members are AWS Cloud, iCloud. Also, we have integrated our members on the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit, which is known as OAML, and new return. This is to enable our members ensure that they send their suspicious transaction return and cash transaction return. More so, we have also registered our members on NIPS platform, Nigeria Interbank Settlement System, for the verification of BVN of our clients. So we have been doing a lot to ensure that we make sure our members are captured within the digital sphere. All of us, we know that digitalization is the road to go, is the final destination, as contact business is going to be more expensive. So we're embracing any reforms, and we are prepared to cue in what we are saying. These are some of our suggestions in terms of streamlining our members so that we will not be lost out. In all the other reforms, we found out the skillful ones are always omitted because you just increase arbitrary capitalization of review their capitalization using monetary, monetary requirement. And that usually push many of us out. For 25 months, we have not been working. Most of our capital is eroded. So in our thinking, any review of capital, not merger, will make many of us out of the business.
All right. So, one of the biggest challenges the economy, Nigeria's economy is facing at this time is FX shortage, which is at the core of your own business. We know that the wish of the president is, as expressed, has been unification of the exchange rate for the official and, the price out there. But we see that's really difficult at this time. I think as at this morning, Naira on the parallel market was about 940, but officially it's still 770 something. The margin is even getting wider. How do you think we can solve this problem? How can the BDC help in this?
Yes, supply is a government issue, and that is what is pervading the success of the harmonization of the foreign exchange market. As it is today, we only have two cogent sources, the reserve and also the diaspora remittance. And that is why in one of our press release, we asked for autonomy for the Bureau de change to be digitalized. There is a lot of money in the economy and outside the economy that is not captured as a result of lack of technology. So we have supported anything about reforms to increase liquidity. The second sources is the diaspora remittance. I'm happy even His Excellency, the President of the country, Tinubu Asuajo, have said that in 2022, the country received almost about $22 billion. You see, if you can empower the Bureau de change, make it democratic, make it centralized, the Bureau de change alone can create sources that will help in the building of infrastructure. We can give examples. For instance, in India, BDC through diaspora remittances generate nothing less than $40 billion to the economy for the development of infrastructure. So this is a government source that can be harnessed. Then two, other reforms can come in terms of changing of regulation, leading to how accounts are being run and stuff like that. So this is a source that is not being harnessed. I'm happy even the central bank governor one time did complain that they are not even seeing the diaspora remittances. The banks too are not seeing the diaspora remittances because there are a lot of fintech, there are a lot of payment platforms that are operating and they are borderless. They are outside, they operate within multiple jurisdictions. For instance, look at Binance. It's just a payment platform. If you go to Binance now, you see that in a daily basis, they do nothing less than $4 billion turnover. They have about 1.2 million transactions in a second. So this is the way to go. Give autonomy to the Bureau de change, empower them, and also encourage them. And that is why we are saying, if you want equity, you must go with clean hand. We know the fear of the central bank, the stigmatization of the public. So what do we do to enhance our capacity so that we'll be serious businessmen? And that is why we have a roadmap that we are advising the Apex Bank to look into it and also engage with us and see how we can solve the problem.
All right, we do hope that the Central Bank of Nigeria would listen and work with you. Well, thank you so much for clearing the air on some of those issues, Mr. Gwadabe, the President of Association of Bureau de Change Operators of Nigeria. All right, let's take a break now. After the break, we'll talk about food security from many fronts. To join us again. Welcome back. Let's talk food security now. President Tinubu has created a National Livestock Reforms Committee led by the chairman of the All Progressives Congress, Mr. Abdullahi Ganduje. According to Mr. Ganduje, the low productivity of the sector, that's the livestock sector, has made Nigeria an import-dependent economy, draining scarce foreign reserves used for importing dairy, meat, and other livestock products. While this committee is focusing majorly on, but not restricted, obviously, to the farmers and cattle rearers clash. But of course, we'll talk about the industry generally, that's the livestock industry. And we have to have that conversation now. Joy Onime, the Public Relations Officer of Obonge Women Multipurpose Cooperative. She's from here in Lagos. Thank you so much for your time, madam.
Thanks for having me.
So you are into fisheries, pig, livestock generally.
Yes,
we know that diseases is a huge challenge to the livestock industry. What else would you say stands in the way? Why are we still importing cattle and, dairy when we have the potential to feed ourselves?
Well, as much as we will say that we have the potentials of feeding ourselves, but the truth is that we're not doing up to capacity. If you look at production level, is quite low compared to consumption. So that's why there's still a lot of importation. And the major challenge facing the average farmer in Nigeria is the fact that we have feeding constraints. You see, there's a whole load of hike there. To feed is a problem. So many of the farms are shutting down. And in a situation whereby farms are shutting down, how can you feed the nation? They can't keep up with the feeding. We have grain scarcity. it is real. Because right from March this year, we have a whole load of, every week we keep having increment in our feeding cost. And who do we pass this down to? To the consumers, right? And when consumers can't cope, there is a depreciation in sales. And when there's a depreciation in sales, the average farmer can no longer operate because the cost impact of the what you buy is what you sell. So you find that a lot of farms are closing down. People are out there, they're hungry. They're hungry because we can't meet up with what we need to sustain the population out there.
Where are we supposed to get this grain from that you're using for your feeding?
Well, it's supposed to be from within the country, but you and I know the insecurity system is really causing a whole load of havoc. So we don't know. The grains we used to get for far less price each time is so high, especially we have maize, a major factor in feeding most of our livestock, like the fish uses maize, the poultry people uses maize, the average pig farmer, any kind of livestock you're talking about, maize is a major thing we use, and it's so expensive. Now we have soya too. All these grains are making things so difficult because if you buy the feed, it's expensive. If you formulate for yourself, the cost is still high. So at the end of the day, you put it on the product and the consumer is saying it's too high, we cannot buy. They look for alternatives which might not be good enough. And then you talk about importing, because importing...
And then we go back to our former conversation of FX shortage.
Exactly. So like the federal government, if they can come to the farmers' help by seeing way whereby we can have, crops, feed made subsidized for us.
Okay, so but paint a picture for us. You mentioned corn, soybeans, and all of that you use for the feed.
Yes.
How much was it, like maybe a bag? How many kilograms do you buy? How much was it in January? About how much is it now?
Wow. In January, we could buy corn for like 200.
How many kg?
Okay, like a kg. We could buy it for 200, 150. But right now, as we speak, a kg of corn is over 500 naira. So multiplier effect takes place.
And all of this feed into the protein, the goat meat, the cow meat, the pork, the white chicken, and all of that.
Yes. So that's why you see a major price increment. And another thing, we have climate change too, which is not helping. Of course, we know most of the states complain of flooding. And even in Lagos State, we have that major factor of flooding. So when we have flooding, it affects our farm areas and a lot of people that have planted, because we're not able to predict, the climatic condition. Like before, we'll say between this time and this time, we'll have this kind of harvest. But people plant without knowing when the rains will be heavy and when the rains will not come at all. So you have that disturbing us too. We have a lot of loss because
it disturbs. Okay, does it disturb you from the part of the feed, or does it disturb you as a livestock owner?
It's a chain, ma. It's a chain because we have people that have to plant the seeds, and when there's no seed, you cannot make your feed. So it's pari passu. We are working hand in hand. So when we don't get enough grains, we won't have enough harvest because we need grains to make our feed.
Your feed. So now you talked about government intervention, but we know that the president, we had the broadcast, I think it's just about 2 weeks now, about palliatives and grains being given to states and all of that. Hasn't that gotten to you? You are in Lagos State.
Well, we've not seen it yet. We're still expecting to a great extent. So we're still expecting. We are hoping it will come very soon. Though they've tried an intervention by ways of programs whereby they give farmers little help like feed. like the appeals program here in Lagos State in collaboration with the World Bank, a lot of farmers have benefited, right? But it's not enough. Like Oliver's twist, we are asking for more. Because when you compare with what we are doing, the feed given compared to the costs is like drowning. So you find that still we are complaining it's not sufficient. We would like a situation whereby we'll have more of such grants, and it should come in good measure. And you have other little kind of interventions from government, but we would like more. So that is it.
But is there a way for us to eradicate this importation of grains? I mean, from a layman's view, we have the land, we have fertile land, we have the weather. You know, why can't we plant what we need?
Okay, good. That's a good area. But when you look at our terrain, really, you find that most of the western side is urbanized, and the northern side, where we depend majorly for these grains to come in, you have insecurity. So it's working hand in hand. But the few people that are planting around the southern part of the country, you have flood, as I said before. Then you have issues of bad roads. Our road network is pretty bad too. You find that most of the farm areas, you can't really have access. So we would like government intervention, you know, to encourage farmers in a place whereby you are cut off from your farmland. How profitable you're going to be spending so much on transportation. You know, one thing is to plant, another thing is to bring it out of the farms. So those are all part of the challenges we as farmers face.
But the issue of diseases and pests.
Oh, sure, that's another thing we have. Like the swine flu that comes in and out, the bird flu come in and out. It has shut down a lot of farmers, you know, because many of these people go on loan to be able to sustain themselves. But when you take a loan and you have such kind of epidemic, you can't recover on time, what happens? You have to shut down. And in shutting down, you're reducing the food productivity of the nation.
And employment too. We have to thank you so much, Ms. Joy Onime, PRO of Ogbonge Women Multi-Purpose Cooperative. Thank you so much for your time. And we do hope to stay on this matter until we get good answers.
Thank you.
All right, well, talking about flood and the threats to crops, let's join now from Delta State, the state coordinator of She Farmer, Lovett Ufoma. She has pictures, both in words and literally pictures of what we just talked about here when you talk about flood disturbing the farmers. There she joins us now from Delta State. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us, Lovett. Can you unmute, please? I cannot hear you at this time. Hello? All right, I do hope we can have Lovett join us. She's joining us from Delta, and she had earlier shared some pictures and videos of what they are going through, especially the women. Of course, She Farmers comprises mostly only of women. We have the national coordinator there. You see some of those pictures that she shared with us earlier. This, as Ms. Onime talked about, the infrastructure road to the farms. You know, even after the farmers have had their crops, and even if they have a good harvest, how do they come out of or bring those crops out of the farm? That is also another challenge. So the issue of flood and climate change filling the air these days at the G20 climate change topped conversations, and what emerging countries should do. Of course, the developed countries have also pledged some funds. We hope to see those funds. But in Delta State, the She Farmers right there they sent in these pictures of some of the things that they're going through. And in spite of this, they say that they are resilient, because you see the women there, they still are able to wade through the flood, get the cassava out, make the gari. So when you go to the market and see those gari, it's a lot of work and sacrifice that has been put there. And the saddest part of it is that a lot of them barely make enough, you know, to make ends meet, you know. So this is a plight of those she farmers in Delta State, and we're supposed to have their state coordinator. Apparently she's having some issues with her network and audio. So I do not think that we will be able to take her. But I mean, let's see those pictures and videos sent of the plight of women there. And they've been asking for access to land, but even when they get the land, then the issue of infrastructure, they go through the rigors of planting the seed, watering it, waiting patiently for the crops to grow. And when it's time to get it out, it's another phase of challenge, from flood to lack of developed infrastructure. And of course, funding is still at the heart of it. Earlier this week, we had NERSO join us on this program, and we tried to connect them. NERSO said they're already in the know of she farmers, but we hope to see results from that connection for food security for the country. So unfortunately, we cannot have Lovett Ufoma join us. They're very unfortunate, but perhaps we'll just listen a little bit to the video and see if we can make something out of it.
You see? They are going to open a new town again. You see? Let me say tomorrow. So now we are headed to the compound now. Yeah. You can see this is Choshi compound, your uncle. This is Choshi compound. You can see it. Okay. You can see the level of the water. It's above the middle level. Yes.
A lot of challenges that the women face. I'm sure it's not just in Delta. We just had the visuals from Delta, and we hope we could have gotten the state coordinator of she farmers in Delta State. Do we have you? Hello, Lovett, can you hear me?
Oh, how beautiful.
All right, doesn't look like we can have that. So let's take a break now. When we come back from the break, we'll head to the markets. Welcome back to Watching Business Morning here on Channels Television, and it's now time for the markets with Will Ibong.
I have good news for you from the fixed income space. We're seeing yields really rising in that space, as in like good news for investors, because this is back to school season and parents need money to pay their school fees.
Well, I don't know how many school fees you're paying, because you've been talking about school fees for days now.
School fees is important, especially with this high inflation. We need this extra money, and this is where making investment wise choices are the ways to be able to
yeah, but I mean, if you're going to pay school fees and yields are increasing at this time, isn't it late?
Not really, because the more the yields rise, it's better for investors, because they get more money for it. But some of them, when they short sell, depending on their positions in the market, if they're shorting, then maybe they want the market to drop. Then depending on your investment plan.
All right, we'll do school fees, women.
So we're seeing yields really closing for bearish. I mean, the bonds market closed bearish yesterday. That means yields are rising in that segment. The average yield rose by about 8 basis points to 14.3%. Now, across the curve, we saw that average yield rising at the short end as market participants sold off the March 2025 paper, but fell at the mid segment and the long segment following bargain hunting for the 2029 paper and also for the 2037 paper. But we're going to bring in Chukanwa Chukwu, is the head asset and liability management UBA, to give us more insights as to regarding why we're seeing this jump in yields, especially with the bond auction on Monday and the NCB primary market auction on Wednesday. Good morning, Chuka. It's good to have you on the show.
Good morning, Will.
Chuka, looking at the bond auction last Monday, we've seen this jump in yields. Yields are rising, but it's still below inflation, but it's still good news for investors who are not seeing their monies, yields or interest rate dwindling. Their investments are giving them some returns. Can you tell us more about why we're seeing this spike in yields and making some comparisons as to what we should expect?
Okay, thank you very much. Like you mentioned, rightly mentioned, the yield inch up, especially on the bond side. There was a bond auction on Monday where 360 billion was offered, and it was undersubscribed because 251 was sold. However, the talking point is the movement in yield, about 40 basis point movement in yield from 15.85 to 16.25. That's quite significant. We had anticipated this movement, but not this huge movement. And like you asked, it's quite exciting, and it's also good for investors. In the fixed income space, especially on the bond side, an average investor is looking to buy, as cheap as possible. And so once the yield moves up like this, it's quite exciting. And I believe that those who bought at this auction will definitely benefit strongly, in the coming months, because this yield will definitely drop to about 14%, and people will really make a huge kill from it.
Okay, let's look at let's talk about the NTB auction on Wednesday. We did see a movement in stop rates for the short, that's the short paper, was 6.5%. The mid segment was about 7%. And we saw that movement also in the long end of the curve of 12.98%. Comparing to the previous NTB auction, we did see a movement. That was a rise, except for the mid segment where it remained unchanged. This is going to be a trend going forward, but we want to know the implications for the government who are looking to borrow more. And we've seen that total debt from the DMO, the news that came out yesterday, that our debt has risen to about 87 trillion naira. How is this going to impact the government repaying this debt, and if they keep increasing the yields or the stop rates?
Well, like you mentioned, rightly mentioned, there was an NTB auction on Wednesday. The yield moved up slightly by 43 basis points, from 12.55 to 12.98. Coming to the question as regard, government, the result, the news that came out about government borrowing and all that, the government needs to borrow. And for you to be able to borrow, you have to make the yield attractive for investors to come in. And so the movement in yield, especially on the NTB, you can see that there's a bit of fluctuation in the movement. You've seen the previous auction came out at almost 15%. The last one before this came out at around 12.55, like I said earlier, and then this came out at 12.98. So government, we definitely continue to seek investment opportunity, especially on the fixed income market. Now, in terms of repayment, if you recall, during the January, February, the government did mention that they are going to, borrow heavily in the fixed income market, and they're most likely looking at the longer end of the curve, which is on the bond side, and that is why there was an introduction of a 2053 bond. The essence of this is for government to be able to spread out the repayment plan. It's cheaper for them to be able to spread out the repayment plan rather than boxing themselves in the corner. So the news about the government borrowing is quite worrisome, but there's nothing the government can actually do about it, because they need to make the yield attractive for investors to come in. And I believe that most of the policies government is putting in place is geared towards looking for other source of revenue generation, like the physical aspect of it. I've always mentioned that government has to look at the physical aspect of the economy, and then be able to match it with the monetary aspect, and that way things will begin to move up.
You did mention that 2053 paper being introduced, and we did throughout this week. I think we've seen that interest in that paper, that particular paper. But we're looking at expecting inflation data from the National Bureau of Statistics today. What are your expectations, and how do you see? Well, we do hope yields doesn't keep rising. Well, we need it to rise above inflation. Good for investors, bad for the government. But what do you expect from the data today? Do you see it going higher?
Yeah, the last inflation figure came out at 24.08. That was, huge movement from 22.79, the previous inflation figure. So this one, we also expect it to move up probably by 30 or 50 basis points. The reason being that all the parameters that affected the last inflation figure is still in play. I mean, we still have a high cost of petroleum products. We still have a high cost of food. The exchange rate is still there. Things hasn't improved much. So we will still see an increment in the inflation figure as it come out later today. And so I believe that like I said earlier, the fiscal aspects of the government policy will have to be taken care of. This will be matched with the monetary aspect, and then the inflation figure will gradually ease. But for now, the inflation figure will still go up, maybe within the next 2-3 months, and then we start seeing gradual reduction in the figures.
So what's your actual projection? Do you have a number, a figure you want to pin to this?
The factors affecting the inflation are not only one aspect. Like I mentioned, you have the physical aspect, and then you have the monetary aspect. So we look at the physical aspect, which is, what the president is actually addressing. First of all, he has appointed minister. We have minister for finance and a coordinating minister for economy. They will need to look at the physical aspect. And what are these aspects, physical aspects? You look at the security situation. They will need to, tackle that. In tackling security situation, it will help movement of goods and services. Because what we have now, we see farmers go to the farm, but this produce don't get to the market, which is the end users, because of insecurity. So government will have to look into that, and also government has to look at the tax, other aspects of generating revenue. Most Nigerians probably we are the least, we pay least in terms of tax, in most of these developing countries. So government obviously will have to look at that aspect as well. They have to also look at the inflation. The exchange rate. We need to produce more. Our only foreign revenue generation is oil, and presently we are not meeting up to the quota. And so the government will need to tackle that, especially as regards the oil theft. Now, when we're able to produce enough, and then government will now be able to sell, generate more effects that we need to cushion the change as regards the downward fall in the naira. And once that is done, we'll begin to see the economy, kickstart. And then, of course, in terms of SMEs, government will also have to pay more attention to this, provide the needed capital for smaller businesses to strive. And then these smaller businesses will create a job opportunity. And once job opportunity is created, we see that economy will start developing, and then some of these issues we are having will reduce.
Thank you so much, Chuka, for not giving me a figure, but going around it in a very robust way. Thank you so much, Chuka Nwachukwu is Head Assets and Liability Management, UBA, for sharing your perspective on Business Morning.
Thank you very much.
Now, so we see not good news for the equities market, 0.05% down yesterday. We did expect, I was expecting, a positive close, but we did see that red close marginal, but maybe we'll get a reversal today. Just so we've had 3 negative closes for this weekend, just 1 green close. So we see that volume yesterday, all in the green yesterday. So see a green for the activity chart, all jumping, in yesterday's trading session. That showed a lot of, sell-offs and buy interest, mixed bag of that. However, so we're just hoping that the market rebounds today. But for the NASD unlisted market, they did see that uptick for 2 straight days now. They've been on the uptrend. So good news for them. 0.58 on Tuesday and 0.21 on Wednesday. So on Thursday rather. So
it can't all be bad.
It can't all be bad.
Yeah, we can't all be paying school fees at the same time.
Oh goodness, yes, definitely. So that's it. We just hope that we wait to see the close for today, and we'll have positive news for our viewers later today.
Sure. Thank you so much. See you at 1:30, Will. Okay. All right, it's time to go to another market now. It's the crypto market. And as has become usual on Fridays, it's on me to see what's happening right there. So if we see the numbers for crypto for this morning, there we see it's a green, continuous build up from the positive that we had yesterday. We see Bitcoin is up more than 1%, settling at $26,594.03. Ethereum is also looking good, almost 1%. In the green this morning at 1,630.85 right there, BNB and all of that. So when we look at sentiment of the markets, we can tell from here that it's a little bit more of recovery than the red. Let's look at the other slides there, the fear greed. The investors are still afraid. I guess you don't just overcome your fear in a bit like that. So it's still fear for the fear greed index. Looking at the numbers right there, we already have Bitcoin, we have Ethereum, BNB. So we can see there that it's mostly red for those major coins that we follow right here. Cardano looking really good there, adding more than 2%. XRP also almost 4%, 3.82% increase in 24 hours. Now there's one other story making the rounds this morning. I will come to the top gainers in a bit. Let's have Olumide Adesina now. This Deutsche Bank is partnering Swiss crypto firms. Sounds like something that'd be good for crypto. We know that Deutsche Bank is a major bank in the world, financial institution and all of that. So I wonder what it will bring to the market, but we'll have Olumide Adesina, our financial market analyst, joining us to expose that to us. Hi, Olumide, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me. So interesting conversation around that report because you understand Deutsche Bank, well, that's Germany's biggest bank and one of the leading European banks with that relationship with the Swiss custodian firm really brings in more liquidity and kind of credibility among traditional investors. And the interesting thing is that it's not just Deutsche Bank. We're also hearing reports that Standard Chartered also has kicked up its crypto custody in Singapore. You understand Standard Chartered too has a very big tentacle in the financial industry that definitely will bring in more liquidity. And also, Frank Templeton, one of the leading asset managers in America, 1.5 trillion asset under management, also apply for spot Bitcoin ETF. And that's really why we saw an uptick in the prices of Bitcoin and the crypto market in the month of September. I often recall that the month of August was one of the most terrible periods this year in the crypto market since the FTX collapse. So, this has really brought in a lot of gains. But right now, the bulls really need to be on top of their game to stay above the $28,000 mark before we can really see it's a bull call. But the FTX scare, where a lot of concerns was that they will start liquidating their tokens, have been brought to rest because most of those tokens will be sold on the OTC. So that's really brought him some respite, and we saw a squeeze among short sellers. So right now, it seems that Bitcoin has some respite despite the strong dollar, looking at it from week to week.
So we know that, talking about the SEC the other time, they did bring some respite to Bitcoin and the other coins, but it didn't last for long. Do we have an idea how long will this actually drive Bitcoin to 28,000, or do we see it, waning off very soon?
The market is very fluid and, different macros, different updates. But right now, the SEC has been quite skeptical about approving the spot Bitcoin ETF. But I think the odds are against them after Grayscale won that their court case on the fact of they have a good case on their spot ETF being approved. And also you look at the fact that banks, like I mentioned, Deutsche, Standard Chartered, Frank Templeton, Fidelity, BlackRock, these are trillion-dollar institutions, so they are also bringing a respite to the fears concerning the space. But having said all those things, I think what will really bring Bitcoin's bulls really back is how the US Fed their next meeting talks about the interest rates hike. You saw the European Central Bank talking about the fact that interest rate has peaked, and that was why the euro dropped to below the 1.7 support yesterday. So that really will give the boost, because the US dollar has a strong correlation against crypto assets. So the US Fed will be the midterm umpire.
All right, so at least we should have a peaceful weekend with this. We expect that the impacts will spread all through the weekend, at least sustain that positive sentiment till Monday, you think?
I'm not really sure. This is a very volatile market. You don't really give such prophecy in time of the crypto space, where you could recall that some news could just spring up. But in reality, I think Bitcoin has been more stable. In fact, compared to the Nigerian Naira, you see that the crypto market is looking more stable than the Nigerian currency. So I think, you're right. We're not going to see those kind of swings we saw last year. So I think we are fair to say we might have a peaceful weekend.
All right. Thank you so much, Olumide. And I wish you a peaceful weekend too.
Yeah, thank you too.
All right. Okay. Do we have time for that? The top gainers, we see the gaining numbers really looking good. They're 11%, 8%, and all of that. Let's see the top losers. And we see that a bit out of point there. But I mean, 4%, 1%. So it's a bit of positive at this time. And as Olumide said, and I wish that we'll have a positive weekend until Monday. But that's it on the program today. Thank you so much for being a part of Business Incorporated. We really appreciate your presence 5 times this week. But do remember, 1:30 p.m., Will Ibong will be back to give you updates on the world of business. And tomorrow, 7 p.m., Laddie Williams will give you all you need to know about what happened in the markets, fixed income, NGX, and all of that. Tomorrow, 7 p.m. during Capital Market. I'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend.